In April 2020, Hollywood legend Jeffrey Katzenberg, the man who helped build DreamWorks Animation and greenlit The Lion King at Disney, launched a streaming service called Quibi with $1.75 billion in funding. By October of that same year, just 6 months later, Quibi was completely dead. Gone. Shut down. That's $1.75 billion incinerated faster than any major tech startup in history. To put that in perspective, that's nearly $10 million burned every single day for 180 days straight. But here's what makes this story truly fascinating. Katzenberg convinced some of the smartest investors in entertainment, Disney, NBC Universal, Sony Pictures, all the major Hollywood studios, to hand over their money based almost entirely on his legendary track record. He promised them Netflix, but better. This is the story of the fastest billion-dollar failure in modern business history. Before we dive into this financial disaster, if you're interested in economic stories that unfolded while most people weren't paying attention, the kind of billion-dollar mistakes that teach us invaluable lessons about business, timing, and hubris, please hit that like button and subscribe to The Sleeping Economist. And click the notification bell so you never miss these stories. Chapter 1. The Hollywood Titan. To understand how Quibi burned through nearly $2 billion in 6 months, you need to understand Jeffrey Katzenberg. This wasn't some inexperienced tech founder stumbling through their first startup. Katzenberg was Hollywood royalty. During his decade leading Disney's film division in the 1980s and early 90s, he greenlit The Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, and The Lion King films that collectively generated billions and revived Disney's animation empire. After a bitter falling out with Disney CEO Michael Eisner in 1994, Katzenberg co-founded DreamWorks with Steven Spielberg and David Geffen. There, he produced the Shrek franchise, Kung Fu Panda, and How to Train Your Dragon. By 2018, when Katzenberg started pitching Quibi, his resume was essentially unassailable. He'd spent 40 years in Hollywood at the highest levels. He knew content creation. He knew talent relationships. He knew how to launch entertainment properties. But Katzenberg saw something that worried him. Young people weren't watching traditional television anymore. They were on their phones, consuming content in short bursts, Instagram stories, Snapchat, YouTube clips. He believed the future of entertainment was quick bites of premium content, specifically designed for mobile viewing. The pitch was seductive in its simplicity. Katzenberg argued that there was a massive gap in the market. On one side, you had low-quality social media content free, shareable, but amateur. On the other side, you had Netflix and Hulu high quality, but designed for your TV, requiring 30 to 60-minute time commitments. Quibi would occupy the sweet spot. Hollywood-quality content produced by A-list talent, but delivered in episodes under 10 minutes, optimized exclusively for smartphones. He called it premium short-form content. Think of it as HBO, but you'd watch it on your phone during your morning commute or while waiting in line at Starbucks. To make this vision reality, Katzenberg brought in Meg Whitman as CEO. Whitman had run eBay during its golden era and served as CEO of Hewlett-Packard. On paper, it was the perfect partnership. Katzenberg brought Hollywood credibility. Whitman brought Silicon Valley and business operations expertise. Together, they embarked on the most audacious fundraising campaign in streaming history. Between 2018 and early 2020, they raised $1.75 billion from virtually every major entertainment company: Disney, NBC Universal, Sony Pictures, Viacom, Warner Media, Alibaba, and Goldman Sachs. Investors weren't just betting on the ID, they were betting on Katzenberg's golden touch. But here's where the first red flags appeared, flags that almost nobody noticed. Katzenberg was raising unprecedented amounts of money for a company that hadn't produced a single piece of content or proven any aspect of its business model. Traditional startup wisdom says you build a minimum viable product test it with real users, learn what works, then scale up. Quibi did the opposite. They raised all the money first, committed to massive content spending, hired hundreds of employees, and built expensive technology before knowing if anyone actually wanted what they were selling. Chapter 2. The Billion-Dollar Bet. With $1.75 billion in the bank, Katzenberg and Whitman started spending like Hollywood royalty, preparing for the Oscars. They committed to producing 175 original shows in the first year, alone an absolutely staggering number that dwarfed what even Netflix was producing at the time. But it wasn't just the quantity that was expensive. Katzenberg insisted that Quibi content had to be premium top-tier Hollywood production values with A-list celebrities. He greenlit projects starring Chrissy Teigen, Liam Hemsworth, Jennifer Lopez, Kevin Hart, Idris Elba, and Anna Kendrick. Each episode cost between $100,000 and $150,000 per minute to produce. Yes, per minute. A typical 10-minute Quibi episode cost over $1 million to make. Compare that to YouTube, where creators produce engaging content for a few $1,000s per video. Or even Netflix, where high-end shows cost $100,000 to $300,000 per episode for 30 to 60 minutes of content. Quibi was spending Netflix money to produce content that was 1/6 the length. The math didn't make sense from the start, but Katzenberg believed that only premium Hollywood content could attract subscribers willing to pay $5 monthly with ads or $8 without ads. Quibi also spent millions developing proprietary technology called Turnstile, which allowed viewers to rotate their phones and seamlessly switch between horizontal and vertical viewing modes. Every show had to be filmed and edited twice to accommodate both orientations. It was technically impressive, but incredibly expensive, and it solved a problem most people didn't know they had. Users were already perfectly comfortable watching horizontal video on their phones without rotating them. Meanwhile, Quibi spent another fortune on marketing. They secured a Super Bowl ad spot in February 2020, which cost approximately $5.6 million for 30 seconds of airtime. They plastered ads across social media, billboards, and bus stops. They paid influencers to promote the app. Industry estimates suggest Quibi spent between $400 and $470 million on marketing in its first year alone. For context, that's more than most successful startups spend in their entire lifetime. But beneath all the spending and celebrity partnerships, fundamental questions remained unanswered. Who exactly was the target customer? When would they watch Quibi content? Why would they pay for short-form content when YouTube and TikTok offered endless free alternatives? Katzenberg's answer was always the same. Trust me. I've been doing this for 40 years. And because of his track record, investors, partners, and employees largely did trust him. That trust was about to be tested in ways nobody could have anticipated. By early 2020, Quibi had burned through hundreds of millions of dollars, but the launch date was set, April 6, 2020. The company projected it would need 7 million subscribers in its first year to be viable. Internal projections were optimistic. Katzenberg told investors he expected to reach that number within the first few months. Everything was ready. The content was filmed. The technology was built. The marketing campaign was launched. And then the world changed. Chapter 3. The Pandemic Launch. On March 11, 2020, the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 a global pandemic. Within days, cities across the United States began implementing lockdowns. Offices closed. Schools went remote. And critically for Quibi, nobody was commuting anymore. Nobody was standing in line at Starbucks. Nobody was killing time in airport terminals or on subway cars. Quibi's entire value proposition, premium short-form content for people on the go, had been designed for a world that suddenly didn't exist. Katzenberg and Whitman faced a critical decision: delay the launch until the world returned to normal, or proceed as planned, they chose to launch. On April 6, 2020, Quibi went live with a 90-day free trial to attract users during the pandemic. Initially, the numbers looked promising. Within the first week, Quibi reported 1.7 million downloads. Press coverage was extensive. But underneath those download numbers, a catastrophic problem was emerging. Almost nobody was actually watching the content. App downloads mean nothing if users don't engage. And Quibi users weren't engaging. Typical streaming services see users spend 30 to 60 minutes per session. Quibi users were averaging under 7 minutes, barely enough to watch a single episode. Worse, retention was abysmal. Industry analysts estimated that only 8% of people who downloaded the app were still using it after the 90-day free trial period. That meant 92% of users tried Quibi and decided it wasn't worth paying for. But the pandemic wasn't the real problem. It was just the excuse that revealed deeper, fatal flaws in Quibi's entire concept. The first major flaw was content strategy. Katzenberg had convinced Hollywood stars to create shows for Quibi, but the format didn't suit storytelling. 10-minute episodes weren't long enough to develop compelling characters or complex plots. They weren't short enough to feel like casual social media content. They existed in an awkward middle ground. As one critic wrote, Quibi shows feel like watching a TV show on fast forward or a YouTube video that's trying way too hard. The second fatal flaw was that Quibi didn't allow screenshots or sharing. Katzenberg, coming from Hollywood, was obsessed with piracy protection and content control. So Quibi disabled the ability to take screenshots or screen record content. Users also couldn't cast to their TVs. In 2020, when virality and social sharing were how content spread, Quibi had deliberately made itself unshareable. While TikTok videos were going viral organically, Quibi content died in isolation. The third flaw was price. At $5 monthly with ads or $8 without ads, Quibi was asking people to pay Netflix prices for a fraction of the content library. And unlike Netflix, which you could watch on your TV with friends and family, Quibi only worked on phones. By June 2020, just 2 months after launch, internal panic was setting in. Quibi had only 500,000 paying subscribers, 7.5% of what they needed to survive. The company started desperately pivoting. They added casting to TV capability, directly contradicting their mobile-first positioning. They extended the free trial. They spent more on marketing. Nothing worked. Chapter 4. The Collapse. By August 2020, just 4 months after launch, Quibi's fate was sealed. Internal documents later revealed that daily active users had dropped to approximately 400,000, a disastrous number for a service that needed millions of engaged users to justify its existence. For perspective, TikTok had nearly 100 million active users in the US at the same time. The gap between Quibi's ambition and reality was staggering. Katzenberg began a media tour trying to explain what went wrong, and his answer was consistent. COVID-19. I attribute everything that has gone wrong to coronavirus, he told the New York Times. Everything. But we own it. Except he didn't really own it. He was blaming external circumstances rather than acknowledging fundamental product flaws. Industry analysts and competitors weren't buying it. If the pandemic was the problem, why were other streaming services thriving? Netflix added 26 million subscribers in the first half of 2020. Disney Plus reached 60 million subscribers. The media criticism intensified. Tech journalists pointed out that Quibi's problems existed before the pandemic. Content creators noted that the platform's restrictions made it impossible to build an audience. Business analysts highlighted that $100,000 per minute content could never be profitable at Quibi's subscriber numbers. One particularly damning analysis calculated that even if Quibi reached 5 million paying subscribers, an optimistic scenario, the math still didn't work. Behind the scenes, things were even worse. Quibi's leadership was burning through cash, trying to save the company. They'd already spent over $1 billion on content production. They'd spent another $470 million on marketing. They were spending millions monthly on employee salaries, office space, and technology infrastructure. The money was disappearing at a terrifying rate, and there was no path to profitability in sight. By September 2020, serious conversations about shutting down were happening at the executive level. Katzenberg and Whitman explored selling Quibi to a larger company, perhaps Warner Media, NBC Universal, or even Facebook. But nobody wanted to buy it. Why would they? Quibi had proven that its content didn't attract audiences, and its technology wasn't valuable enough to justify an acquisition. On October 21, 2020, just 6 months and 15 days after launch, Katzenberg and Whitman sent a letter to investors announcing that Quibi was shutting down. The letter was remarkable for its lack of accountability. "Quibi is not succeeding," they wrote. "As a result, we have reluctantly come to the difficult decision to wind down the business, return cash to our shareholders, and say goodbye to our colleagues with grace." The speed of the collapse was unprecedented. 6 months from launch to shutdown, $1.75 billion raised and burned, approximately 200 employees laid off, and 175 original shows that would largely disappear from public view forever. The entertainment industry, which had bet so heavily on Katzenberg's vision, was left stunned. How had someone with 40 years of success failed so spectacularly, so quickly? Chapter 5. The Aftermath. The financial carnage of Quibi's failure was staggering. Of the $1.75 billion raised, the company managed to return only about $350 million to investors, roughly 20 cents on the dollar. That meant $1.4 billion had simply vanished. Every major Hollywood studio that invested lost tens of millions. Disney lost money. NBC Universal lost money. Individual investors like Alibaba and Goldman Sachs lost money. For many investors, it was one of the worst startup investments in history. But the human cost went beyond just money. Nearly 200 Quibi employees lost their jobs in October 2020 during a pandemic in an entertainment industry that was already contracting. Many had left stable positions at Netflix, Disney, or traditional studios specifically to join Quibi because they believed in Katzenberg's vision. They were now unemployed with a failed startup on their resume. The content creators faced their own disaster. Actors, directors, writers, and production crews had created 175 shows for Quibi, and almost all of that content disappeared. Because Quibi owned the rights and the platform was shut down, most shows became inaccessible. For Jeffrey Katzenberg personally, the failure was devastating to his reputation. For 4 decades, he'd been seen as a Hollywood genius with the Midas touch. Quibi shattered that image. The same media that had praised his vision in 2018 and 2019 now dissected every decision that led to the disaster. Business schools began developing case studies on Quibi as an example of what not to do. The Harvard Business Review published analyses titled, "What Quibi Can Teach Us About Building a Business and the Fatal Flaws in Quibi's Strategy." Perhaps most importantly, Quibi demonstrated the danger of ignoring basic user behavior. Every piece of evidence from YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and Snapchat showed that mobile users wanted one of 2 things: very short, shareable social content, or long-form content they could watch anywhere. Quibi tried to create a middle ground that nobody wanted, and then made it unshareable, guaranteeing it would fail. By early 2021, Quibi was officially dissolved. The company auctioned off its assets, office furniture, computers, and whatever technology components had value. The turnstile technology, which had cost millions to develop, was sold for an undisclosed but reportedly minimal amount. The billion-dollar content library went to Roku for approximately $100 million. And Jeffrey Katzenberg and Meg Whitman moved on to other ventures, leaving behind one of the most expensive lessons in startup history. Chapter 6. The Human Lesson. The Quibi disaster teaches us several invaluable lessons about business, innovation, and human psychology that extend far beyond the entertainment industry. The first and most critical lesson is about the danger of reputation-based decision-making. Investors gave Katzenberg $1.75 billion, primarily because of his track record, not because he'd proven his new idea worked. This is the equivalent of investing in a restaurant because the owner used to be a successful architect. In startup culture, there's a concept called product market fit, the idea that you've created something people actually want and will pay for. Smart entrepreneurs test for product market fit early and cheaply. They build minimum viable products, get real user feedback, and iterate based on what they learn. Quibi did the opposite. They raised all the money first, built the entire product, spent $1 billion on content, and only then discovered nobody wanted it. The second critical lesson is about solving problems that actually exist. Katzenberg believed there was a gap in the market for premium short-form mobile content. But belief isn't the same as validation. If you'd surveyed smartphone users in 2019 and asked, "What's missing from your mobile entertainment experience?" almost nobody would have answered, "I really wish I could pay $8 monthly for 10-minute shows from celebrities that I can only watch on my phone and can't share with anyone." The problem Quibi tried to solve didn't exist. The third lesson is about the importance of timing and external factors. Katzenberg wasn't entirely wrong to blame. COVID-19, the pandemic, did eliminate the on-the-go use case Quibi was designed for. But this reveals a deeper vulnerability. Quibi's entire business model depended on a specific set of circumstances continuing indefinitely. It wasn't resilient. When circumstances changed, the company had no plan B. There's also a lesson here about hubris. Katzenberg's 40 years of success may have made him less open to feedback and less willing to question his own assumptions. When junior employees or outside analysts suggested that Quibi's model had problems, those concerns were apparently dismissed. The Quibi catastrophe stands as a monument to the dangers of unchecked confidence, unvalidated assumptions, and mistaking past success for future inevitability. Jeffrey Katzenberg earned through $1.75 billion in just 6 months approximately, $9.7 million every single day, proving that even billionaires with legendary track records can fail spectacularly when they ignore fundamental business principles. If stories like this, where we uncover the economic events that shaped our world while most people weren't paying attention, fascinate you, please like this video and subscribe to the channel, because we're just getting started with these financial educational mysteries.